Okie dokie. In this video, what I want to talk to you is about throwing exceptions. So I want to show you how to throw exceptions, i.e. you as the developer, how you can throw an exception if something goes wrong. So in here, let me just get rid of this and we'll come back to reading files in a second. But let's say that we have a method in here. Let's just say public static. And then here I'm going to say double, and then I'm going to say divide, for example. Now here I'm going to take int a and int b, and I'm going to basically perform a division on a with b. So I'm going to say if b equals to 0, so if this is the case, then something went wrong. Otherwise, I want to return a divided by b. Now at this point here, where we have this method, we can basically throw an exception, right? Because we know that the input is incorrect, therefore we can throw an exception. So here we could just say throw, so we can throw our exception now. We can say throw new, so throw new, and then the exception type. So in here you can be specific on the exception, but for example, I can say illegal and then argument exception. So use this exception when the argument is incorrect. And then here you have to pass a message. So maybe inside, and inside you can say cannot divide by 0. By and then 0, just like that. And to be honest, this is it. So obviously I could even be more specific. I could say arithmetic exception in here, but I'm just going to leave as illegal argument exception. Because if you look carefully, so arithmetic exception, so this class in here extends runtime exception. And basically it's more specific to do with any arithmetic operation, which we are doing in here, to be honest. But at this point, we're not dividing by 0 because we're just checking the argument which is passed. And if the argument is incorrect, we just throw an illegal argument exception. Now let's test this out. So here, if I say south and then pass, for example, into divide. So let's just say 10 divided by 2, we should get 5. So this works. Now if I pass 0, so 0 will be in here. 0 equals to 0, yes, throw an exception. So let's just run the program, and you can see that now we did throw an exception, and you can see that it was illegal argument exception, and the message in here is cannot divide by 0. So this is how you can throw exceptions. So this is actually a built-in exception, and I'm going to show you how you're going to create your own exceptions. But this is how you can throw exceptions. So similarly, remember, I think it was integer.parseInt. So this method here. Let's just go into this method. So we have a couple of implementations. Let's just open up the first one. And this here says throws number for my exception. And have a look. So what it does is actually saying if s equals to null, throw this exception, cannot parse null string. And it's kind of the same as we've done right now. So the same here, it checks for the radix. If it's less than the correct minim radix, then it basically throws another exception with a different message. And you can see in here, it has a couple of number format exceptions being thrown. Now, if I open up number format exception, let's just go inside in here. Have a look. Number format exception extends illegal argument exception. But here, they are being more specific, right? So this is when you can actually have your own exceptions and then extend these exceptions one way or the other. Now, if we click on illegal argument exception, you can see that it's a runtime exception. Now, one thing is, so let's just go back in this method. So this one, parse int, this one, have a look, throws number format exception. This is actually telling me that this method can throw this exception. So in here, we can actually say that this throws a legal argument exception. Now, this doesn't change anything in here, but it's just telling the reader that comes in. So if anyone is looking at this method, they know that this method divide might throw an illegal argument exception, which in the case where b equals to 0, then it throws the exception. And finally, one thing to note is that, have a look, this is throw. So whenever you want to throw an exception, you say throw new. And if you want to assign the throws, so if you want to say that this method throws an exception, basically is throws instead of throw, and then the exact same name in here. If this was a checked exception, so let's just change this to a checked exception so you see what's going to happen. So here, if I say exception, so this still works in here because illegal argument exception is an exception, but now I need to deal with it. Have a look, I need to deal with this exception. Next, let me go ahead and further explain throwing these checked exceptions.